Hey everyone. Hello. Just getting my notes. As I hit go, I realized I didn't have my things prepared. Since it's so very like me to not be prepared. So good morning. It is June 9th, 2020, and welcome in for this, I guess we'll call it an informal class. Hi, Erin. On conjuring joy, compassion, and courage. So let me just, yeah, like I said, I kind of hit go prematurely. And I'm sitting on a floor and I don't know what's happening here. Anyway, so welcome. If you're new here, I'm Sarah. I am the founder and head magic maker here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we have been doing this magical goodness here on the internet for 4 years now. So if you're new, we always have new faces to us. Welcome in. And if you've been here for a while, hello. You guys know me and who I am. And I see lots of familiar faces and some new faces in the comments. So hello. Anna should be popping in here any minute. There's Anna. Anna is my real life sister and the co-founder of the Sisters Enchanted. And you'll see her in the comments as the Sisters Enchanted. But that's Anna. For you. So she is there. If you need anything, she'll help me answer questions so that I try not to get super unfocused. So today we are talking about conjuring joy, compassion, and courage. And there's so many reasons why these three things are important, right? Like ourselves, our energy fields, our personal space that we live in here on this earth. We are our own most powerful tools, our most powerful magical vessels. And if you think about like a really amazing cup of tea, or you think about crystals or candles, or like whatever the magical tools are that you work with, you have all of these pieces that you bring together. And when we look at our own energy, we can look at things like joy, compassion, and courage as these magical ingredients. So if we are this cup of magical tea, right? And you think of tea and maybe you include some like nettle or some cinnamon, which I don't know, those are random, but you think about creating these potions, this tea that we would drink to feel a certain way or do a certain thing, we can bring into our lives things like joy, compassion, courage, love, release, strength, and bring those into our energy field in the same way that we would create some kind of magical tool that we would use in our daily lives. So that's what we're talking about today: joy, compassion, and courage. Now, we need these three things in our lives for like 8 million different reasons. I don't think there's anybody that would argue that we all don't benefit from having joy, compassion, and courage in our lives. Like we all need those things. But if we don't have joy in our lives, true joy, now, quite often, when I ask women in our communities, so we teach classes, and in the past, when I did intuitive work and readings and things, I often ask, when was the last time you felt truly joyous? And women in particular, typically, not always, but very typically can't answer that question, or it takes a long time, and women have to step back and say, wow, that's a really hard question. Or I don't know, I can't remember the last time. And there's some work like on bringing that up, right? And true joy is what helps us see through the darkness. So when we're trying to live a magical life, if we're doing shadow work and we're holding a mirror up to our faces and we're like, what role did I play in this? How can I be a better person? Like, what have I not gotten past yet that's holding me back in life? All of this stuff that shadow work is, it's hard work, but necessary work, right? Having that piece of joy in our lives and inserting things that are truly make us feel joyful and light us up, that helps us to live a magical life. It helps us to do shadow work. When it comes to manifesting, if you want to manifest a new home, or you want to manifest money or health or a new job, like whatever it is, if you don't have something in your life that is making you feel joyful, then we aren't going to be able to really manifest things long term, because we're going to keep sinking back into these feelings of like a lack, not enough, negativity, old stories, traumas that are surfacing, all of these things. So joy is a really, really, really important piece. And Jen says I can answer that question now. I had Jen Bauer in the comments. transformed like crazy in the last few years. And yeah, Christina Booz has been manifesting like crazy. Christina bought a house and sold a house in like a matter of 24 hours out of the blue. Like completely crazy. So yeah, but you have to find these little pockets of joy and what brings you joy. So if we're not conjuring joy in our lives on purpose, and we have to intentionally seek joy because we're so busy. Like, you know, I'm a mom of 2 little kids. I'm a business owner. All of these things that take up my time and my space and my energy. And if I don't make room for real joy and things that make me happy, then I don't do it. And I just kind of get stuck in the like, oh yeah, well, of course I'm happy. I've got kids and a roof over my head. What's not to be happy about? But when was the last time I really felt like so light and like laughing and hysterical and like I was radiating joy? That's what we need. That's what we all need in order to live a magical life, in order to do the shadow work that we need to do and to manifest things into being. So the next little magical ingredient here is compassion. And here with compassion, when we feel joyful, it's much easier to feel compassion. It's hard to feel compassion for ourselves and for other people when we don't feel joyful. When we feel like that we are just stuck in the darkness and in a cave of misery, it's very hard to be compassionate for ourselves and to be compassionate for other people, right? So when we don't have compassion, then that's when we become resentful. We become like, woe me, poor me, nothing's ever going my way. Like, how can I help other people if I can't even help myself? And so we need the joy piece first, and then we can be compassionate. And when we're compassionate and we're compassionate with ourselves, you know, we forgive ourselves, we release resentments. We don't get stuck in this like blah, 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 life sucks thing, right? Like we have to practice compassion. And typically when we talk about practicing compassion, we talk about practicing compassion for other people. And when I teach about the throat chakra, I always teach to listen. I think that it's counterintuitive. With throat chakra, we talk about speaking out, right? And we talk about speaking our truth, strengthening our voice. But in order to be heard, you must first listen. Nobody will hear you if you're not listening to other people. And if you aren't holding compassion for yourself and allowing yourself to move through the things that you feel like you failed in, where you haven't done enough, where you didn't pick yourself up, you didn't stand up for other people, you shouldn't have let that happen. You have to be compassionate with yourself first to be compassionate for other people, because otherwise the grief is overwhelming, right? Like the sadness is completely overwhelming. So we need to move through those things in order, again, to live a magical life, to do shadow work, to manifest. We have to have compassion for ourselves. And I see Dana's asking about, or like 2 people, maybe 2 different, the comments are moving faster than I can see them. But this idea of, you know, not having something that's joyful. And those are really, there are times in our life when we feel like nothing is okay. And we feel like things are really, really dark and like we can't get out of that darkness. So if you've been in any of our classes or in our community for a long time, we definitely believe there is no shame in the seeking help game. So one of the things that we talk about when it comes to shadow work is this idea, and that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but I'll tangent onto this. But when we talk about shadow work, we always say that if it feels like that you can't be your own most magical tool, you can't be your own magical advocate right now, you know, find somebody to help you through that. Talk to a friend, get somebody to listen to you, share your story, have somebody help you process it through writing. But there definitely is not a single switch, right, that is going to help you to move through any one thing. Like there's not one thing, there's not a switch that you can flip that's going to help you just suddenly like, oh, I'm joyful and I'm happy now. It's years and years and years of work. You know, how old am I now? Like 12 years ago, I was riddled with panic attacks, anxiety, like couldn't get out of my car to go to work. My mom and my sister had to drag me off to a doctor to like get some help to move through it. So if you're really, really feeling stuck and you're hearing this and you're like, I've tried, you know, just consider like talk to someone who's there to listen to you for sure. Let's see here. We have, oh, Sherry, the end of a marriage is so difficult. Marriage is difficult. And the end of a marriage is very difficult as well. I hear that. My mom's on her third marriage. So I've been through lots of divorces. It is challenging. The Tower, we have a really good blog post on the Tower, actually. And that it's like another perspective on the Tower. So check that out. Yeah, no shame in the self-help game. Yes, yeah, no shame in that. That's when we teach our shadow work class. That's what I say. If you come up with something and it's like crippling to even begin to look at it, step back. And the thing that made me think of this class for today, or this discussion rather, this joy, compassion, and courage discussion, is that the last few weeks, there's not one person that has not seen the energy and what's going on in the world around us, right? And if you have any kind of trauma, grief, resentments, guilt that have not formerly been dealt with, and you're here and you identify as a highly sensitive person, a highly intuitive person, some people identify as an empath that might be here, then you have felt this on 100 different levels. And I know that for me, every bit of hardship, trauma, things that I was like, no, I'm good, I'm strong, I've got this, resurfaced 100-fold in the last week and a half, 100-fold. And that's what made me think, okay, this is what we need to talk about here, because these are the things that move me forward. Joy, finding joy, being compassionate to myself, and realizing that I cannot be everything to every person, and I need to be everything to myself first before I can be everything to anybody else, right? And then having the courage to move forward, which is the next part of our magical ingredients here. So again, if we're looking at ourselves kind of as the magic potion we're creating, our own energy field, the ingredients we're putting in are joy, compassion, and now courage. So joy and compassion are really the fuel for courage, because it takes courage to keep moving when you are remembering all of the hard stuff that you've been through, when you're remembering all of the traumatic experiences that you've lived. It takes courage to get up and keep moving the next day. It takes courage to speak when the people around you don't want to hear what you have to say. All of this takes courage. It takes courage to face yourself in the mirror sometimes when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, did that, lived that, didn't do this thing when I was in the position to do it. It takes courage to do these things. And we need joy first. We need compassion for ourselves in order to be compassionate for other people. And then those two things are really the fuel for courage. So again, if we are our magical pot, it could be a teapot, cauldron, a can, it could be whatever it is, a grid, an energetic grid. If we are our own grid, these are the pieces that we're adding to it here. So we need courage. We need courage to get up and live life, change our lives, to get to where we want to go, to manifest things. We need courage to do shadow work. We need courage to live a magical life, courage. And that comes from joy and compassion first. So that's why we need joy. That's why we need compassion. And it's why we need courage. Now, I have an activity suggestion for you. I'm not going to keep you here all day long because, we need to get out there and do these things in our lives. But Jen says, just keep swimming. Yes, just keep swimming, right? But there are some things that we can do. Now, I'm just going to move around a little bit. I told you I'm sitting on the floor right now. I'm away from home. and I'm not in my space. Normally I'd stand up, and right now I'm kneeling on the floor, and my feet are falling asleep. So I have a suggestion for you, a little kind of ritual or ceremony or something that you can do. Now, I don't have the best light and I don't have the best way to show this, so I'm going to do my best, but I have a couple of different ways that you can do this. So let's talk through one of them. And all I have here is a piece of paper and a crayon. So that's what we're going to work with. Randy says, what about when you get so stuck in it that you can't find joy under any rock, though? That's very common. I would say that of every woman that I have spoken to in this Sisters Enchanted universe since 2016, I don't know of one person who has not been in that position to where they cannot find anything that brings them joy. So quite often, a suggestion that I give people is to think back to something that did give them joy. And sometimes this goes way back to childhood, to teenage years. Was it dancing, scrapbooking? I don't know, maybe a date that you went on and you watched a certain movie or something, like whatever it is, think back and start doing some of those things when you can. Now, often if we're feeling so stuck in darkness, we can't even do that. And that's where I say, find a buddy, find a buddy, phone a friend, phone someone, and helps have a partner in moving forward, right? Have a partner in getting you to the next step. Okay, so here we go. This is the little activity that I have for you. I promised an activity today. So the first thing that I want to do, because remember, we're looking at ourselves here as the magical tool, right? We are the magical vessel, and we're adding in joy, we're adding in compassion, and we're adding in courage. Now, and this might help some of the people that are asking about darkness and not being able to move forward. So the first thing I think we need to do, because it's a very valid point, that it's not easy to be joyful. That is, if it was easy to be joyful, we'd all just be like, I don't know, sliding down rainbows on unicorns all day long, which Jen Sankey, one of our magical mentors here, I feel like that's what her brain is like. Like we're just riding magical unicorns down rainbows. She teaches a unicorn class for us. But for most of us, like there are so many things happening all the time that it's really hard to even like smile sometimes. So the first thing we have to do is remember that we experience grief, and it's okay to experience grief. Now, when we talk about grief, I think most of us hear the word grief and we think about death, but we grieve so many things. Like anybody here who maybe you had to cancel a wedding because of the pandemic. Maybe right now, because of different viewpoints in your families, you're not speaking to family members, or you've lost friends that you've had forever. That's grief. We can grieve that. We can grieve the loss of your wedding. We can grieve. For me, this, might sound small potatoes to some people, but when I was having my daughter, I was like, I'm going to have a home birth. It's going to be all natural, all of these things. I tried for 30 something hours, ended up in the hospital with a torn open uterus, my kid in the NICU. Like it was terrible. And I still, it makes me want to cry thinking about it, because you have to grieve these things. Like they're the things that you thought would happen, you were emotionally attached to, and then can't happen for some reason, big or small. It's no one's job to tell you what's big or small to you. It's what's big or small to you. And you have to grieve that. And that's hard for me to do, because I'm the person that wants to wear a shield of strength and be like, it's fine. I'm fine. I got this. I'm fine. It's going to be great. I'm fine. It is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. It's fine. But after a while, if you don't grieve, that stuff just boils up, which has been happening for me recently. So there's that. Andrea's saying she would want a response to her email. So Andrea, we do have customer service in there Monday through Friday. So I know Anna's watching, and she can keep her eyes peeled for that. If our customer service person, Megan, she's in a different time zone, so she might not be in there yet today. So yes, grieve first, right? We grieve. Grief comes, it's not just death. It's really anything that you feel like was taken from you, like an experience you didn't even have. So the first part of this activity is to write down things that you're grieving. Now, I'm not going to spend all of your time watching me write down the big long list of things that I'm grieving. But what I would suggest that you do is write down on a piece of paper all of these things, particularly things that may have been coming up for you recently. So for me, like my childbirth is something that's been coming up for me recently. A sexual assault incident has been coming up for me recently. All of these things I was like, no, I've got this. I'm fine. I can deal with this. They've really been coming up with me a lot recently. So what I would suggest is writing this stuff down. Now you can write it like journal style. You can just write a list. You could draw a picture. If you can't come up with words, you could just color. If you're like, I can't even, and just scribble with like, I don't know, if you're angry, I've got a red crayon. If you're like mad, a red crayon. If you're sad, a blue crayon, like whatever, a marker, whatever you got. There's no right or wrong way to do this. But first, the grief. So what are you grieving? Now I'm just going to write the word grieve, because like I said, I'm not going to have you watch me all day long list all the things that I'm grieving recently, everything that I've been crying over. So I'm going to write down the word grief. Now, after you write down all of the things, list them or color, or I don't know, draw a picture. I'm not a very good artist, but anyway, write down the things. The next piece of this, because again, we need to also listen to ourselves process this. So it can be helpful for you to like Read it out loud to yourself. That can be helpful. Read it out loud to a plant or the sky or a tree or a pet. You don't have to read it to a person. Or if you have somebody you want to read it to, you can do this with a friend as well. So go through and then say it so that you're hearing it, you're receiving it, you're being witnessed by whatever it is you want to be witnessed by. Which is also, that's hard for me to do because I don't like people witnessing me feeling like I'm being weak, which is not the case, right? Like it's not weak to grieve. That's actually courageous. Like I said before, it takes a lot of courage. So that, if it feels difficult for you, it feels difficult for me too. Oh, my camera's blurry. All right. So first we're going to grieve. The next thing that I'm going to have you do is, so I just wrote the word grieve. We're going to send out unproductive feelings. We're going to release. Now, when I say release, I always feel like that people think like I'm going to light this piece of paper on fire and all of a sudden I've just released this emotion. Now, you and me knowing this, no, it's not that easy. If it was that easy, then we would all just do that and we would just be on with this, right? Like that's what we would do. So this is something that we come back to time and time again. When Anna and I talk about shadow work, we often say that it's a recurring process. It's something you're doing all the time. You're living shadow work constantly. It's not something that you can just schedule in at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday and like, bam, you're done. Wouldn't that be great? That's not the way it works. It's continual. We're always doing it. But in this moment, as we've witnessed ourselves and we've witnessed the grief that we're experiencing here, then we can start to practice moving those feelings into a useful way, right? A way that's going to help us move forward, release those feelings. Now, I love to do this with a spiral. You can do this again, like with an X or whatever shape works for you. You can draw your own sigil or symbol. A heart could work. But I love the idea of a spiral. So over my grief, once I read through my things, I would draw a spiral over it. And as I'm drawing the spiral, see those emotions like releasing into the universe, see them turning into a different kind of energy that's more useful for me, a joyous energy, a courageous energy, a compassionate energy, right? So I've grieved, I've released. Now the next thing I'm going to do is with my piece of paper that I've grieved and released, I'm going to fold it in half. And in that folding in half, I'm going to imagine myself forgiving. So I'm forgiving myself, I'm forgiving other people, I'm forgiving situations, experiences, all of these things, right? And again, none of this is easy. This is all just pieces of a puzzle to help us move forward. And we can come back to these practices again and again. So if this feels like a lot, you can totally just rewatch the video, or you can just write these things down as well. When this is done, we'll put it on our blog and we'll list these steps out for us. So you can always catch it there also. So the next thing we're going to do is forgive. And I'm forgiving by folding over my piece of paper. Now, once I've folded it over, so I've got my forgiving is so hard. I've got my grief and my release on the inside. I'm folding it over. Now, on one side of this, I am going to write down this idea that I'm integrating forgiveness and compassion into my life. So I can actually write that, like I integrate forgiveness and compassion into my life. Or I can write down what it feels like to do that, how I hope to feel afterward, what that looks like for me. Right now, I'm just going to write forgiveness and compassion. So we've grieved, we've released. Now we're integrating forgiveness and compassion. And then on the other side of this piece of paper, I am going to think about what I have to offer the world right now, or my life, or people in my life, and expand my energy upon that, right? So for me, I'm mostly a good listener. I try to be a good listener. I like to teach. I like to guide other people. So I can expand my energy out by teaching, doing this, expand by teaching. Now, if you're a person who maybe you're a really great cook, maybe you're going to expand your positive and joyful energy by cooking for a neighbor, or cooking for somebody that you know who is unemployed, or somebody who's grieving their own loss right now. Or maybe you're going to expand your energy by donating to a cause, or by cleaning up a neighborhood, or by volunteering at your library, or I don't know, whatever your thing is. Maybe you love books and you want to volunteer to read to kids. Like, how can you expand your energy by taking action? That's a key part to manifesting, to shadow work, is taking action. When we talk about manifesting by the phases of the moon and manifesting in general, you know, it's one thing to put an idea out into the universe. It's a whole other thing to act on it. So what can you act on? For me, that's showing up and teaching and guiding. So I expand by teaching and do it joyfully. I'm writing that down. So I've grieved. Again, I'm just going to keep talking about my steps. I grieved. And again, I wrote the word grieve so that you didn't have to watch me write everything I'm grieving. And then I released with my spiral. If I was doing this on my own, this would take me a little bit, right? I wouldn't do it this quickly. I integrate forgiveness and compassion. And I expand by teaching, and I do it joyfully. So what do you expand your energy by doing? What do you do to expand that energy? And then write down that you do it joyfully. So what else? Sorry, I feel like I'm forgetting something here. Yep, nope, that's it. And then the next piece of this is that I would take my paper, fold it in half one time, and remind myself that I love myself. I'd fold it again and remind myself that I love others. I love others, which is hard to do. Now with this piece of paper, you could do a few things. You could toss this in a fire. You could put it on a sacred space. You could put it into a wallet. You could pull like 3 tarot cards, do a reading for yourself. You could put a crystal grid around it or put a crystal on it and charge up that energy. Now, spend time with it each day for, it could be a week, it could be just a few days. It's totally up to you. There's no rules in the wild world of witchery. But see yourself again and again and again, right? Like forgiving, like this is my grief. I'm releasing that grief. I'm forgiving and I'm integrating forgiveness and compassion for myself and other people into my life. This is the action that I'm taking to find joy, and I'm doing it joyfully. I love myself and I love others. And then we just come back to this and we come back to it. And that is what hopefully will help us to use ourselves as our greatest powerful magical tool, our own energy grids, right? Because we look for all these tools. We create crystal grids, we do all these things, which is great. And I love doing that too. But you are that same tool. Like you can do this just with your own energy and the things that you're putting out into the world. You know, and this is a great way to do this. So there's an activity for you on conjuring more joy, more compassion, and more courage. And moving through these feelings, you know, hopefully help you find the courage to keep moving forward, particularly in hard times. So there you go. Jen does sometimes plant it with flowers and remind myself of it every time I water the flowers. Yes. We used to do this on Beltane, where we'd write down our intentions for the light months of the year and then put it in the bottom of a plant and plant a plant on top of it. And then when the dark months came, in the end of October, beginning of November, we would give the plant back to the earth and then, you know, take out our paper and kind of honor that time. So that's a really cool exercise there, Jen. All right, I'm going to scroll back up through the comments just quickly. Let's see here. Crystal is therapist. I tell myself I won't yell for the first 6 hours of the day. Yes, something that we have been practicing in our house with our kids. So if you guys have been around, anybody who's been around for a while knows my daughter has a mixed bag of sensory processing, ADHD, dyslexia, differences, autism, like these different things going on. And so we've been practicing repeating things slowly 3 times, then slowly counting to 3 and not yelling. And it's, it's a practice. Like, believe me, I practice what I preach. I practice what I magically project. Let's say that. I walk my talk. For sure. It's a challenge, Crystal. Let's see here. And Devin's pausing, writing all of this down. Yes, no, yeah, you totally don't have to do witchery to be doing these things I'm talking about. So thanks for sharing them. And yeah, we will put it on our blog too with some notes. So that should be up by the end of the week. Give us a few days there. Just scrolling back up. And I just see a lot of like, yes, forgiveness is so hard. Attachments are strong. Deanna's grieving a 25-year marriage currently. Yeah, and you know what? Grief. So we're not specifically here to talk about grief, but since I just saw that too, and grief, like I said, it comes in all shapes and sizes, and you can grieve. And again, grief for you is the thing that keeps us really from experiencing joy, compassion, and courage, because we get stuck in grief mode. And grief comes up in a lot of different ways. Like you could even be grieving. So speaking of marriage, I always like to share openly that marriage is something that I struggle with. Like we are on the struggle bus of marriage, and we're working through it, and it's been hard. But something for me has been grieving my perception of marriage and parenthood, like what I thought it would be, my expectation, and what it is, and what I'm having to change and grow and be flexible and like find a different way than what I thought. And that's grief too. That's still grief. So grief comes in all different ways. It doesn't have to, and we shouldn't feel badly if what we feel like we're grieving is small potatoes compared to what somebody else is grieving, because it's still our life and it's our energy, right? So, but what we want to do is see it for what it is and bring joy and compassion there. So we have the courage to keep going. We have the courage to try something new. Like it takes me a lot of courage to, when I'm like with my husband, say, I see where he's coming from. I do. Even if I don't, even when it's, it took me a long time to see where he's coming from, but that's courageous to admit, you know what, you're right. I wasn't hearing you. And now I'm hearing you. It's hard for me to agree, but I'm hearing you. And that's the first step, right? Is it's a challenge. So Aaron says, Sarah, you saved my marriage. Yes. I'm pretty sure mine's going to be just fine, but it's definitely a hard road. Not a super easy road by any means necessary. When we got married, which now we're talking marriage, these chats always go someplace completely different. But when we got married, my husband and I both worked, and we both spent a lot of time apart. Like he worked during the day. I often worked nights. I was in graduate school. Like we didn't even share. We did our own laundry. Like we just, I don't know. And I had known him for years. And then we got married, had kids. I became a business owner. He stopped working. And like, so where we were when we were married looks nothing like where we are now. And it's pretty much taken an entire, like, wow, we are essentially in an entirely different life than we were all these years ago. So that has been a huge adjustment to make while staying married. But I know we're in it. We're trying hard. My husband's parents are married for, I don't know, 40 something years when his dad passed, and my mom's on her third marriage. So you can see it's taking me a little bit more effort probably to stay the path. But yes, change is a conscious action. Christina's saying, yes, very true. Very, very true. All right, I'm just kind of scanning comments here. I see you guys are chatting too in the comments. Betrayal is so hard to overcome. Yes, it is, Sherry. It is for sure. Amanda, remember I told you in Salem about men needing feeling of being in charge? Yes. I've met Amanda and a few other women watching at our in-person events. And yes, I'm an open book. I've discussed these things before. Let's see here. Yes, deep convo in the car that day. Helped me realize I needed to be heard and work towards with an oblivious husband. Yes, I say a lot of things like, I hear what you're saying. This is what I'm saying. But yeah, listening is key. I do say listen more than you talk, which is not easy to do. And I think is very relevant to right now. For those of you struggling with parenting, it's relevant to parenting. It's relevant in marriage. Listen more than you talk. That's hard though. Anyway, so conjure more joy, more compassion, and more courage in your lives. And yet a little witchy exercise you can do. And you can add, like I said, crystals, tarot cards, herbs. You can charge it up with like, if you drink coffee every morning or tea or something, you can actually take your little paper situation, and you could put it like under your cup and charge it and drink it every week, or every day rather, for a period of time. So you can use this in any way that you want. I don't like to be super prescriptive when I give like magical tools, because I think that everybody should do what works for them. If I tell you to do it a specific way, like drink tea every day, and you've never had a cup of tea in your life, that's not going to work. So do what works for you. Put it in a wallet. If you're a person who puts your sun visor down in your car, stick it up there, it smacks you in the head when you pull it down. And remember, whatever your thing is, put it somewhere so you'll see it and you'll remember, okay, this was my grief. I'm releasing that grief. I'm practicing forgiveness. I'm taking action joyfully in this way. I am forgiving myself. All the different steps we talked about. So we can, we'll put that in a blog post for you. Dawn, it can be hard for those with unwoke partners. Yes, my partner is unwoke, I would say. He's a really great guy, but he does not fall into the woke bucket. So I hear you. I see you. Believe me, I see you. So anyway, all right, guys. So there's some ideas for you. And again, this will be on the blog by the end of the week with some notes typed up so that you don't have to remember all of these things, all the steps and whatnot. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. Keep it a little bit on the half-hour shorter side on this day, so everybody can get out there and live their lives. And I know Anna was putting in the link to our free class that starts next Wednesday, Expedition to Soul. It's totally free. It's an awesome class, one of my favorite things to do. And a hashtag not enchanted. Oh my gosh, that's why we should make him a mug that says not enchanted. No, he is. If you ever get anything in the mail from us that's been shipped out, he ships it. So that's his enchanted contribution. He ships all the things. He ships your magical wares. Give him credit where credit's due. Anyway, yeah, Expedition to Soul is coming up. So I hope to see some of you there. And I hope you guys all have a great day. Joy, compassion, and courage. Joy, compassion, and courage. Just remember, those are the ingredients. Those are your ingredients today. If you find yourself like, what crystal should I use? Ask yourself, what energy pieces can I use? I can use joy, compassion, and courage. And put them in. All right, guys. I will see you all around the internet, and I hope you have a great day ahead. Bye.